Welcome, everybody. I have with me someone very special who is a resident of New Mexico and a wonderful musician. This is Terry Burns. Terry, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you being here today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Michael. This is great.
Well, thank you. I have so many questions for you because I know we have talked at gigs and we have talked at other venues, but I've got some questions for you. So let's just get started into this. Now, you are originally from Clovis, New Mexico. So were you born and raised there?
Yes, my family, my great grandparents and my grandparents got to Clovis in 1906 on the railroad from Kansas. My great uncle, I'm not sure, we think he had tuberculosis and he needed a drier climate. It's a reason a lot of people came here from the east.
That was a common thing back then, yes.
But Clovis at the time was called Riley's Switch. And what it was Clovis was where you made the decision on the railroad if you were going to keep going through Carlsbad and go out to LA and San Diego, or if you were going to go up through the Raton Pass to Denver and catch the San Francisco Limited to San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So Clovis was where you had to make that decision. And at the time, it was just a switch. There was a shanty town, tent town on the railroad, and it was called Riley's Switch. And then New Mexico became a state in 1912, and I think that's about when they changed the name of Riley Switch to Clovis. And the legend is that the daughter of the railroad magnate, whoever that might have been at the time, was studying French kings, and she came across King Clovis, the first Christian king of the Franks, and that's where they got the name Clovis.
Okay, so then you graduated from Clovis High School, right?
Yes.
Okay. So so tell me about when you started playing the bass. Did you start on electric? Did you start classical and playing upright? I mean, everybody gets to the bass differently. How did you get to it?
Well, my mother was a piano player of sorts, and she made me. I've got three little sisters. She made us all take piano lessons when we were kids. So I was taking piano, and then I started playing trombone for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. And for Christmas in 1968, I was 13. My father had arranged to give me a hand-me-down electric guitar and amp from his brother's son, my cousin. And my mother was not happy with the quality of that instrument. And I'll never forget it, although I had forgotten it until she reminded me. Christmas morning, 1960, what did I say? 68.
Eight.
My parents were pretty well known in Clovis. It wasn't that big of a place. She called the owner of the only music store in town and drove me downtown. He opened up the store and said, "Take your pick." And she changed my life that day, that Christmas morning. And
Interesting.
my first instrument was an electric bass. So I was 13. By the time I was 15, I was playing in bands with people who were in their 20s in Clovis. At the time, the rock scene was great in Clovis. But I started on electric bass at age 13, and by the time I was 15, I was already playing in bands.
Okay, so at what point did you move to I call it the acoustic bass, some people call it the upright bass. At what point was it soon thereafter you moved to the acoustic bass, or
You know,
was it
I
a while?
It was a while. I played in a lot of rock bands, and in 1973, after graduating high school, I went to Omaha, Nebraska to go to Creighton University. And I hooked up with some musicians there, as I was always wont to do. And one of them was a great guitar player named Dave Stryker
Okay.
in New York. He's in New York now. He was 15, I was 17. And we just started playing, jazz stuff. And I bought my first upright in 1975
Right.
and still have that bass today.
Oh, it's a wonderful bass, and it's the one that you normally play then, right?
No, it's a
Oh,
plywood bass.
oh,
It doesn't have the complexity of sound of the one that you like, but it's a real thumper. And that's I still have it. I love that bass.
okay. So you went to school at Cretin University in Omaha, but then you were able to get an opportunity to study with Rufus Reed in New York City. So how did that come about?
Well, over the years, Dave Stryker and I and a few other great players, we were just playing all the time, every night. His parents had a basement that was completely soundproofed, and I bought my first real book, I think, out of the trunk of somebody's car, because it was illegal, and
Yeah, back then it was illegal.
it was illegal, and we just started playing from page one, and we'd listen to the record and we'd try to emulate that. But I had left Creighton. I only lasted 1 year at Creighton.
Okay.
It was not for me. And I applied for a grant from the National Endowment, and I got the grant. And I
Oh,
went to New York, National Endowment for the Arts. I went to New York in 1980 and actually lived on the Upper East Side with Dave Stryker. And started my regimen of lessons with Rufus Reed.
wow, what was that like? I bet. I mean, I know he's a very famous bass player, and I know he was, I mean, extremely versatile, and he did a lot of work during that time. What was it like to study with him?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, he had just moved from the Chicago area to New York, or actually Teaneck, New Jersey, and it was wonderful. I wasn't there that long, just a couple of months, and a kid from Clovis, New Mexico, via or Omaha via Clovis, New Mexico. I did not like the city. I did not like it at all. This was pre Rudy Giuliani, whatever you think about that, but it was not a very pleasant place, and it was, I didn't like it, but it was amazing studying with him, and there are things that he imparted to me that I used for the last 40 years or more with my students.
Okay, so how long did you study with him? You said it was only a few months?
Yeah, just a couple of months. And
Okay.
and, and at the time, um, the Jocko was still alive, Weather Report was really happening, and Chick Corea's band was happening, and I do play a lot of electric bass, so I wanted to play more electric bass. So I moved to LA in
Mhm.
1982, and every gig I got there for 13 years was on upright. I ended up playing in a lot of swing bands with no drums, just piano, bass, and vocalists, basically. There was a great viola player named Jimbo Ross, and a great guitar player, Courtney Sappington, who's now in New York. And I played in a lot of bands with those guys. I played a little bit of electric with a guy named Al Weissman,
Okay.
a guitar player, and I played with quite a few people. I did some session work, a couple of commercials. I did some television things
So you were in LA for how long?
till 95.
Okay. Now from there, you you moved to Minneapolis,
Yeah.
Minnesota. And this is the funny part is because so you'd gone through all of these things, and then you moved to Minneapolis, and then you start your educational career by getting a degree in music. So what got you to move to Minneapolis, and what school did you attend out there?
Well, there's a lot more to that story.
Oh, okay, good. Fill me in.
I moved to Minneapolis for romance.
Oh, okay.
There was a woman that I had been with in Omaha, and it didn't work out. And we tried after 20 years to revisit it, and it didn't work out again. But I went to this small school, private contemporary music college in Minneapolis. It was called Music Tech at the
Okay.
time, just west of downtown Minneapolis. And a few months later, I was the bass department head of that college.
Okay.
Actually, it was in late 94. So that's right. I said 95. Actually, I moved there in 94. Um, so I was base department head there for 17 years.
Okay.
And while I was there, the college, which was a um, private college, closely held, partnership, um, they were they had been accredited by the National Association of Schools of Music, which is a national accrediting body, but they were going for this thing called regional accreditation with an outfit called North Central. Now that's the real accreditation. The national one's easy to get. This one, the regional accreditation, is really difficult to get. So part of that effort was they wanted as many of their faculty as were interested to go get their degrees. And they had a very generous program which paid for the majority of it. So while I was teaching full time, I went to Augsburg College in Minneapolis, a Lutheran college, and got my BA. And then I couldn't stop. So I got an MA. Yeah, I just couldn't stop. I loved every minute of it. And so I'm teaching full time. I'm also running. I also was part of the group that put together the master's program at the college that I worked. I was running that program. I was playing gigs, and I was getting my degree. And then
You weren't busy at all, were you?
not at all, not at all. Took me 34 years to get my undergrad. I started in 73 and finished in 2000 and 32 years. Started in 73 and finished in 2005, and then got my graduate degree in 2007.
So all this time now you're in Minneapolis and you're teaching full time, you're running a department, you're getting a degree, and you're playing gigs, and
Right.
you're writing, because I listened to some of your stuff. Oh my goodness. So you spent how many years teaching for this school?
20.
20 years you
Yep.
taught for the
I was
school.
base department head for 17 years. I wrote 4 base method books, which were the curriculum for the college. So that's another thing I was doing at the same time. And then when I got my master's degree, they made me dean,
Dean
and it wasn't a good fit
of
for me or the college. I also wrote the self-study for the accreditation for the college, massive undertaking. And then when I left the deanship, which was by mutual agreement, believe me, I went to Penn State and got a postgraduate degree in institutional research. And then I ran the Office of Institutional Research at the college. I know.
How did you stay sane during all of this? My goodness.
I have no idea, but and we'll get to this later. So starting in about 2009, because of the demands of the college and in my additional collegiate studies, I kind of backed off playing gigs a lot. I concentrated more, like you said, on my writing, and I was working with an original band called Story City. But at that time, and probably still today, the gigs were from 9 to 1 in the morning, and I couldn't get home at 2 in the morning and then be at my best at 8. So I really backed off playing live gigs for quite a while.
Yeah, I bet you did. You can only burn the candle at both ends for how long?
That's
And then
exactly right.
all of a sudden it meets in the middle and you burn out.
So I
Yeah.
didn't play for quite a while.
Okay.
In the college, which ended up being called McNally Smith College of Music. At our height, we had about a little less than 1,000 students. And as dean, I had to counsel so many of them, and then as director of institutional research, I was the guy that reported to the government for this thing called what is it, post-secondary educational data set, IPEDS. It's a national database. So that was one of my biggest jobs, was to do that and prepare reports and statistics here and there. And it was just, I mean, I made really good money,
Yeah,
while I was
but
doing it.
still, yeah,
But
your sanity was at risk during all of this because you're trying to do so much, and
exactly.
then something has to take a hit,
Yeah.
right? Something
And
has to stop.
it became gigs. I just, I would find myself, you know, after working all day and on my way to a gig, and I'd be like, why in the world did I don't want to do this gig. Why am I doing this? And so I didn't play for quite a while.
Yeah, I feel you. I do. I understand completely more than you. I know you know. I understand this. So at what point, what brought you back to New Mexico, and when was that? When did everything come to a head in Minneapolis and you said, I'm done, and you come back to New Mexico? When did that happen?
Well, being a dean and being the director of institutional research, I was on the inside, like they say about Congress. I saw how the sausage was made, and it was not pretty. And when my immediate boss, the provost, was fired unceremoniously just one day, just out of the blue, I said, you know what? I think so my mother was getting older. I have three little sisters, as I mentioned. They all had families, kids, in different parts of the country. And I didn't. And I was ready to get out of Minneapolis. And I was ready to get out of that college because I saw what was coming. And um, so in 2014, I resigned my position, sold my house very quickly, and moved all my belongings back to my mother's house in Clovis at age, what was it? See, so that would have been 2014. So I was 59 years old when I moved back with my mom.
You moved back home. Well, at least you didn't move back into the basement. That's the good part, right?
No,
So
no, Clovis, they don't have basements. The
yeah,
water table's too
water
close to
tables too. So you moved back home to take care of your mom.
Well,
That's now.
to help take care of her. I mean, it wasn't just me. I have a sister that still lives in Clovis. Another sister lives in Edgewood on the other side of the mountains here. And it was all of us together, but I was with her 24 hours a day for almost 5 years.
Okay. And at that time, is that when your mom passed away?
Yeah, we lost her in May of 2019.
Okay. All right.
But
So
during that period, I don't know if you've ever been to Clovis, but jazz is not something that's really on people's radar in Clovis. So
no.
that continued for the next 5 years after I got there, of not playing. So I hadn't really played very much in at least 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, as you said, there's not a whole lot of jazz scene out in the eastern part of New Mexico.
No.
And here you're taking care of your mom and you're doing stuff. So after your mom died, then what brought you to, because you live in Rio Rancho, so what brought you to the west side of Albuquerque? Why come? I figured maybe you'd go back to Minneapolis or you'd go to LA or to New York to play. What brought you to Albuquerque?
You know, and those were salient questions on my mind at the time. After, I know I'm not going to stay in Clovis. What do I want to do? Well, I figured I had such a history in New Mexico, and my family had such a history, and I love the state so much. Given its difficulties, there's difficulties everywhere, but let's talk about, New York. I don't want to live there, and I can't afford it.
Well, yeah, you said you didn't like the city when you were there the first time.
Well, I like going back now for visits. I love it. It's changed since 1980. It's changed a lot, but I can't afford that. And in LA, yeah, I've been there, done that. The 405 freeway. No,
And it's
and
expensive too.
and it's expensive. Denver was a thought, but it was pretty expensive. Boulder is just forget about it.
Hmm.
And so I started looking around. I wanted to be in here's what I told myself. I want to go somewhere where there's culture, where there's natural beauty, where there's great food, and where the weather isn't ridiculous. Now, I don't ever want to be as cold as I was in Minneapolis ever again, as long as I live. I don't know how in the world I stayed there for 20 years. They come on the TV and tell you don't even go outside tomorrow because the fluid in your eyes will freeze. It's so stupid cold.
Yeah.
There's just no way that I wanted to put myself through that again. So I found this house in Rio Rancho, and man, it was a perfect move. There are so many great players here. It's, I'm not saying Rio Rancho itself, but
No,
in
but the Albuquerque Santa Fe scene,
oh
we've
my
got
God.
so many players. So basically you hit every single one of your checklists, didn't you?
I
Because
did.
great, the weather here, we have 4 seasons, but we don't get ridiculously cold and we're not Phoenix hot.
Right.
You've got a beautiful scenery. You've got a great camaraderie of people who are musicians. Sounds to me like you covered everything that you wanted to cover.
It couldn't have worked out any better, Michael. It just couldn't have been. It was the perfect thing to do. Before I left Clovis, I found a few great musicians, online and got in touch with them. My friend Dave Stryker, the guitarist, led me to John Trent Acosta, and then John Rangel and Jim Aaron. And then I ran into Doug Lawrence, and, I'm playing this next week with Tootie Heath. I played with Eddie Daniels. I mean, there are so many great players, and now we've got Alex Merzen and John Funkhauser. There's so many wonderful players. Not as many as Minneapolis, certainly not as many as New York or LA. It's a small scene, but it's a very vibrant and creative musical environment.
So let's talk about some of your recordings, because you have a monstrous discography. I mean, boy, you have played with some amazing people, and you have also done recordings of your own work. So I want to talk about some of your most recent recordings. You have a new album out, and it's called Particles. Now, that one was also released right about the same time as what is it called? I got to look at it. The Long Shot Trio, and you've got Arroyo, and you've got all these albums out. And I understand, which one was it? Is it Particles, or was it Behind the Mask that was nominated for an NMAA award?
Well, let's see. Long Shot Trio came out in 2020 during the pandemic, and it won the Mexico Music Award in 2021.
Okay. So it won award. Okay.
Yeah. And Behind the Mask came out, was recorded in 2021 during the second lockdown, second pandemic. And that one won the New Mexico Music Award this last year. And I have high hopes for Particles.
Okay, so, and my mistake, I said NMAA, and it's the New Mexico Music Awards, NMMA.
Right.
So you've won twice, and you're in the running for a third time. Now that's pretty amazing. Now I will tell you, and we've had this conversation, Particles, Arroyo, these are not what I expected to hear from you. They were so unique and so different. And that's the fun part, is to put on to, like, and I'll put the links down below, but like the first time I heard Particles, I was like, wait, what is this? This is because, when I've heard you play at jam sessions, and I've come and sat in, and I've heard some of your shows, you're on upright bass, and you're playing a lot of straight ahead stuff. This is not straight ahead stuff. So tell me about Particles.
Well, let's go back to Arroyo first.
Okay. Well, and I have that. Matter of fact, I was showing that to you. I have a copy of Arroyo, and if you're interested, by the way, you could go online, and Terry will send you one.
Right. I never put a barcode on that one. It never went up on CD Baby or anything. That record was entirely composed and then mixed here, but it was composed while I was taking care of my mother. And I've always been very interested in orchestral writing. In fact, when I got my bachelor's degree from Augsburg College in Minneapolis, for my concert, my final recital, the Augsburg Symphony played two movements from my first symphony at my recital. It was terrible, but they did it.
Well, if it's anything like the Arroyo CD, I don't know how that could be terrible.
Well, I had studied with a woman, very talented composer named Carol Barnett in Minneapolis, and she encouraged me to keep going and keep going. But the Arroyo thing, actually, it's kind of my homage to New Mexico, as you had said. And I wrote it all. I had purchased a new string library from Spitfire Strings in London, and sometimes you buy a new library or a new sound, and it just sparks this thing. But I've always been really interested in orchestral music, so that record is all orchestral. And then Long Shot Trio came out later, and then Behind the Mask was more of a continuation of the orchestral thing, except for this time I added a jazz rhythm section to it. So I mentioned to you that the music of my life for the last 40 plus years has been Pat Metheny. I had purposely avoided writing like that because I thought it would just be too obvious, But that record, I said, forget, I'm just going to do it. And I had those 8 tunes written in a couple of months. I need to mention that for 30 of those 40 plus years, the bass player on the Pat Metheny group was my cousin, Steve Rodby.
That's right. You told me that.
And I'm so proud of him. And I don't know if that I tell him that often enough, but he is a consummate bassist and just perfect. Everything is perfect. So Behind the Mask was the first in a series of those kinds of records. And then Particles, this latest record, was a continuation of that. And those 11 tunes were written in about 3 weeks this time.
Goodness me.
Yeah, it just happens. And, and then later on, you're like, I don't remember writing that, yeah. And seriously, it happens all the time. And I've got 11 tunes written for a new record. It's all MIDI right now, or it's all in the box, as they say, in the computer. But I'll get my drummer and Funkhauser, and this year we'll put that one out.
That's and again, and I say it every time I talk to you, I say it every time. It's so different. It's so enlightening to hear it, because I don't know how else to explain it. You just need to go. If you've got Spotify, it's on Spotify. Anywhere you consume, your digital music, you can find it. I'll put a link down below.
Okay.
I was so impressed with Particles and Behind the Mask. And when I listened to the Long Shot Trio with Cal Haynes and Alex Merzen, some jazz trios, the saxophone, bass and drum trios like of Sonny Rollins and Joe Henderson, and they're so in your face. The tenor player is so in your face, and everything's almost a frontal attack of music. I'm not saying that that's bad, but it's you know what I mean. Whereas this is so different. Alex is playing very quietly. He's playing, and maybe it's the way you mixed it, maybe it was the room. The interaction between the three of you guys was very enjoyable. I was quite impressed with that.
Well, thank you. We rehearsed for quite a while, and we had to be careful about what tunes to choose, because harmonically there's only so much I can do. If it's really dense, thick, Keith Jarrett-y, Mark Copeland, thick chords, that's probably not the tune to do. So we had to choose our tunes pretty carefully, things that I could play, as limited notes that I'm able to play simultaneously, and still evoke the feeling of the music. So it took us a while to get to that point, but I'm glad you like that record. I'm very proud of it.
I bet. Well, you should be. And I love Cal's playing. And like I said, I like Alex, and I love the way you sounded on it. And you have so So let me ask this because I guess I didn't ask this earlier. Do you have a preference electric since you said you started on electric, you played electric for years and years, you went to acoustic. Do you have a preference of playing acoustic versus electric, or does it does the situation kind of tell you what you should be playing?
The situation dictates what I'm gonna play. I enjoy playing them both. I've had some wrist problems, which has kind of kept me from playing much electric since I moved here. I hurt my wrist while I was moving, and it's
Oh, okay.
getting better. So actually, I've started to work. You know who I started really listening to again after all these years is Joe Zawinul. He has a record out called Stories of the Danube that's just stunning. And so I've written 5 tunes along those lines, and it's all electric based. We'll see what happens with those
Oh my
down.
goodness. Okay, well, see, now let's talk about your writing because you seem like you're a very prolific writer. And maybe this is a question for maybe another time. But do you just do you just get on a tangent and
Mhm.
just start writing?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And it's amazing. You just kind of sit back and watch the thing take shape. You may write 10 seconds of music in a day. You might write 4 minutes. You know, you just try different things. Oh, I like that. Let's put that in. Oh, yeah, that doesn't work. Um, it's I don't know how to explain it. It just you start off like I might start off with a bass line, for instance, or I might hear a chord with the strings, or I might hear a piano chord, or maybe even a drum or percussion groove. And so that's where I'll start, and then gradually you just build on it, and next thing you know, you got a 6 minute tune, and you're like, okay,
Yeah, how did that come about? So you're a piano player also then, right? You play
I
piano?
I wouldn't call me a piano player. I'm a keyboard owner.
But you use it for writing. That's a good thing.
I do, but my orchestral music is one note at a time. So I'll write a viola part, and I'll write a cello part, and I'll write the second violins, and then, and it's seriously, it's
But it works that way, obviously. And you put everything into the computer then, so you're writing into a music program itself.
yeah, I'm writing. I use Apple's Logic, and Logic is pretty intuitive, as the name kind of implies. And all of those DAWs, digital audio workstations, work essentially the same. They call the same functions different things sometimes, but once you know one of them, I mean, Pro Tools is still the industry standard, and I've thought about going to that, but I'm right now everything's working.
Right. So don't change it.
That's exactly right. Don't update anything. Just if it's
Don't
working,
fix it. It's not
don't.
broken.
There you go. There you go.
That's good. So let's talk about something that I noticed when I've watched you play and I've listened to you play. You always seem like you're having so much fun. You are always smiling. You are always your perspective when you are making music is just, and I use one word for it, happy.
Yeah.
I have no other way to put it. You always look like some musicians, they're concentrating.
Oh, I
And
don't.
their faces, yeah, I'm concentrating as hard as I possibly can. And you're nothing like that. You are always. I remember watching you the other day when I was sitting in, and I just finished playing with you, and I kind of stepped off, and you guys were playing, and you just like up there, just everything's going, and the smile. Oh, it's you're such a delight to watch to play. Even on your video recordings, some of the stuff on YouTube, you're always smiling. You're always happy.
Well, that's great. And everybody tells me that, and I'm not really aware of it till the end of the night when my face hurts from smiling so much. You know. But like this goes back to what I was saying. For 9 or 10 years, I hardly played at all. And now at my age, to be playing as often as I am at a level that with the people that are of this certain level, man, I mean, what's better than that? I mean, there's a few things that are better, but not right now.
No, hey, you guys, I have no other way to. I have no explanation for that. It's because music is supposed to make you happy.
There you
Music
go.
is enjoyable. You're
There you go.
supposed to enjoy doing this. And
Yeah,
if it gets to a point and you hear it all the time, you know, as you even said yourself, I'm driving to a gig. Why am I doing this gig?
right,
Well, then it's not fun.
right.
And you have to get to a point in your life, and it's not always we're both in a situation where, you know, we're retired, we are doing music because we want to, not because we have to, and so the music should be fun and it should be enjoyable. I got time for one more question, and I always warn everybody this: strangest gig, funniest story of something that happened to you. Musicians have some of the best anecdotes. Do you got
Okay.
one that you can share?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. So in LA, I was playing in a band called the Step Sisters, and it was two vocalists and a great piano player named Red Young, who's now in Austin, a wonderful organ player and piano player, and myself. And we had a regular Thursday night gig in Hollywood and a Friday night gig in Hollywood. And one night, on the Thursday night, Linda Ronstadt came in with her producer, Peter Asher. And by the end of the gig, she had hired the band to be her backup singers on the tour with Nelson Riddle. But she didn't hire me because she had Ray Brown. Oh,
Right.
really? You couldn't get anybody any good? You know, so this was before she went out on tour with Nelson Riddle,
Mhm.
and she wanted to preview some of these things at a couple of gigs that were secret in LA, at these clubs. I could barely get in the door. They were so secret, I'm like, come on, I'm in the band. So I got to play a few gigs with Linda Ronstadt doing the Nelson Riddle stuff, only in a smaller setting, and it was just great. But it I thought that was really fun. I mean, I played with some great people, and they're all great. I mean, I played once with a couple nights with Gene Harris, and from the piano player, the Three Sounds. Oh my God, I've never swung so hard in my life. It was amazing. But this thing with Linda Ronstadt was really, really fun. These secret gigs, and there's lines around the block.
Yeah.
You
Not
know,
promoted.
yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're running out of time. I want to thank Terry Burns for taking time today to talk to me. I want to thank you for all the good things for you doing and all the happiness that you spread for when you're playing gigs. Oh, yeah.
My face hurts.
And ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you next time.